Hey guys, and welcome to Quality Shot. I am really excited to be joined by former unified bantamweight champion and now retired Ryan Burnett. How you doing, mate?
Not too bad, mate. I'm doing good.
Good. How's boxing retirement treating you?
At the beginning it was hard to get used to, but now I seem to be getting the grips of everything. I've accepted it in a way, so it's not too bad. I can't complain.
Yeah, I saw you got married as well recently, so congratulations. And
Yeah,
you told me, which I'm now a bit jealous of, that you're going to be going to Dubai tomorrow. So have fun there, and I'm sure you won't enjoy the cold weather that's here. That's for sure.
exactly.
So in terms of, so you said so you're retired now. What are you up to nowadays then after boxing? What does your life look like now?
So I've been in the fitness industry my whole life since I was 9 years old, and it's all I know. So I thought it was a sensible move. Once I retired from boxing, I thought, well, I want to stay in the fitness industry. So I opened up my own gym, and it's been open since March last year. Well, I know it's been stop-start because of COVID, but I opened up my own gym, and it's going really well.
Nice. That sounds really good. And staying fit, which is good as well, staying in shape, isn't it? Because a lot of boxers, yeah, exactly.
All I do is lift weights now, so I don't do much cardio anymore. Like,
that's fair enough. Well, I'm sure you still look good, so that's the most important thing, isn't it? And as you said, so you said it was hard at first, but I'm assuming you're kind of at peace with the decision. It's been just over a year now. I think October 2019, I think it was when you announced your retirement. Kind of citing injuries, etc. Multiple kind of injuries that you just thought it's not worth it going forward, and it wouldn't work. So I'm assuming now, as you said, you're just at peace with it, and you're like, you know what, I'm happy with what I did. I've got no regrets.
Yeah, I mean, it could have went one of two ways. I could have crashed and burned, or I could have looked back at my career and judged it for what I'd done and be happy with it. And that's exactly what I'd done. It was very easy for me to get depressed and fall into a bit of a pit. And when I was doing so, I sort of put myself back together and thought, well, listen, you had a good career. You've achieved a lot, and you've put yourself in a good position. So given that, I couldn't really complain about anything. Once I started looking back, I couldn't complain about anything.
Okay, that's fair enough. For viewers that may have been under a rock for the past maybe 4 years, do you want to maybe just touch upon how you first got into boxing?
So I started boxing when I was 9 years old. My friend was going to the boxing gym, and I thought, well, can I tag along? And rightly so, I went to the boxing gym and I sparred that night. And with boxing, when you get punched in the face, either you hate it or you love it. There is no in between. And I got punched in the face, and I never left. That was me. I was hooked. So from I was 9 years old, I've been fighting.
Tony Bellew said that as a fighter, he said you have to have maybe a slight screw loose to enjoy being punched in the face. He said it's a special type of person that needs to, he said.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I would say to people, oh, what do you do for a living? Oh, well, I get punched in the face for a living. And they're like, what? And it's a weird, you have to be able to enjoy it to understand it. It's a strange one, but it's weirdly enjoyable.
Yeah. So going from, 9 years old, you caught the bug, it sounds like, and then progressed from there. So how do you get from being 9 years old, getting the bug, to turning over pro? What was the journey there?
So I was amateur. I had my first fight when I was 11, I think. And being an amateur, everyone would tell me, oh, you're really good. You'll be an Irish champion. And I was like, Irish champion? That's crazy. And rightly so. I was 7 times Irish champion. And people would say to me, oh, you could go to the World Championships and you could go to the Olympics. I was thinking, oh, that's crazy. But then I went to the World Championships, got a silver medal, which I was robbed. I definitely won that fight in the final. Should have been world champion as an amateur. But then I moved on. After the Youth World Championships, I entered the Youth Olympics, and I fought the world champion then, and I beat him, and I became a Youth Olympic champion. So that put me down as number 1 in my weight. And after that, I was, what is right, 18, 19 then. And it just thought to me, I would love to go pro. And that's when we transitioned over.
Is there part of you that wishes maybe you'd gone to the Olympics? Or are you happy that the time you transitioned and you turned over was the right time, given obviously everything you've accomplished now?
Absolutely. I think going to the Olympics is the peak of a amateur boxer. Like it's the highest. But if I had stayed amateur and I'd have gone try to make the Olympics, gone to the Olympics, it would have took maybe, I think from the position I was in, maybe 2 or 3 years. Inside those two to 3 years, as I turned over, I adapted to the game. I learned the program, because the program and the amateur game, they're two different sports. They're buttered by the same knife, but it's two different things. And those 2-3 years I had in the program, learning my craft, really benefited me. I'm really glad I did it, because I wouldn't have. There's no way that I'd have became a 2-time world champion at the age of 25, 26 if I had stayed on amateur. So I'm glad I turned over.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, given what happened after, it's hard to say, isn't it? And sometimes when you're stuck in the middle of a cycle or right at the start and it's just happened, you just, like, I know some fighters just feel like, do I want to wait 2 or 3 years? And that's kind of years that I could have had in the pro game developing, and then you lose that. So yeah, that makes sense. I heard, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you said that you, at the age of, was it 19? So obviously you turned pro. I think you said you left home at 19, relocated. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard that you said you didn't have a home at the time as well. So you really grafted. Is that correct?
Yeah. I turned over pro. When I was trying to get my pro license, as you have to go through medicals and go through checks and everything to make sure you're safe to fight. And during these checks, I had a brain scan and they found a problem in my brain. Basically, long story short, the blood doesn't flow around my brain the same way as it would any other person. But the human body is incredible. It's fixed the problem. But on a scan, it shows that there's a problem there. And the British Boxing Board of Control, they're so strict when it comes to this stuff because of what happened to Watson. They're so strict. And straight away, they seen a problem and they said, oh, no, can't have a license. He's not safe to fight. And it took me a year and a half to me and my team to prove neurologists wrong, that actually I wasn't at any more of a risk than anyone else fighting. So it even took me a long time to get a license.
That must be a really difficult period, considering, I mean, you would have been in limbo, right? Thinking, oh, am I actually going to be able to fight? Were you looking at potentially even relocating to somewhere else to see whether you get a license in another country? I mean, what was going through your head at that point? Because that's a pretty stressful situation, right?
Well, when your dream, all you want to be is world champion. Everything else comes second. All you ever want to be is a world champion. So to have a doctor phone you and say, look, I'm sorry, but you're never going to box again. I was like, what? This guy's wrong. He's not putting a pause on my life like this. And the things that he was telling me, I knew that something wasn't matching up. Something wasn't right. I knew I was safe to fight. And it took a long time. So I was never in the process of, oh, well, I might have to go down this path. I was just solely set on, I am fighting and I am going to be a world champion. It just, how am I going to get there? That was figuring out my how rather than go elsewhere or do something else.
Yeah, very determined mindset. I guess, when you talk to guys like yourself who've done it at the elite level, world champions, unified world champions, and they all seem to have the same mindset that you're just so driven to your goals, I get that from just listening to you, that it wasn't even an option to think about something else. You're just like, no, I'm going to do this. I want to make sure it gets done. So it's amazing to hear that. So you linked up with, I think you did link up with Adam Booth, nicknamed the Dark Lord. I don't know how much that nickname goes around anymore, but how was it training under him? So obviously, you were under him for quite some time, and you seem to have a very close relationship as well. What's it like? Give me a little bit of an insight into what it's like being a fighter under him, and I guess what he gave to you as a fighter.
As all fighters know, every day is a school day. You can always learn. But as I was number one in the world as an amateur. I turned over a pro. I was 4-0 at the age, I think it was 21. I was 4-0. And I thought to myself, oh, I know a bit about boxing here. I'm not too bad at this. Like I would spar people. I would get my own way. I would spar elite fighters. I would get my own way. I thought I knew the game. See, when I started working with Adam, I felt like a school kid going to school for the first time. This guy was telling me so much, breaking things down, telling me movements in vivid detail. I was like, this guy's a dark lord. Do you know what I mean? This guy knows so much. And since I turned with Adam, my career just skyrocketed.
Yeah, makes sense. And he, at the time, I think, so there was a crossover, wasn't there, with I think David Hay, George Groves. So there's quite a few people that you would have trained with as well. So what was it like being in that environment? Because at the time you had, I think, quite a number of world champions, including yourself. So it must have been a really good environment to be in, right? Like a winning environment.
Yeah, there was always a good circle. You know, I was always around extremely talented people. So when I was walking into the gym, I was always looking up to someone. There was always someone there. I was like, well, you're at that level. If I just do what you're doing, then I'll get to where you are. Do you know what I mean? I was never at the top of the pecking order. I was always around elite fighters, world champions. So I always had somewhere to push towards, which was definitely a big motivator.
Was there competition in the gym about who could run the most or records to be broken, etc.? Was that kind of competition or no?
All the time, everyone, all the time, and every time.
Every time. I was going to ask you who's the hardest trainer, but you're going to say yourself, aren't you?
I don't get me wrong. Every boxer pushes themselves to the absolute limit, but they used to call me the hospital button because I would push myself physically to the point where, at one point, they actually thought we might have to take Ryan to the hospital here because I physically pushed myself to the beyond. So yeah, I was nicknamed the hospital button.
The hospital button. I love that. I love that, Mark, to put that in. In terms of, so for you, because you're in the gym, you're around all these people. Is there anyone to you that not even just in Adam's gym, but any other gym that you went to where you sparred them, or even you just looked at them there in a different weight and you just thought, wow, you're special? Is there anyone that stands out to you over your career that you've trained with or sparred against that you think, okay, you're going to do stuff in the future?
There's a number of people, like I can't, there's not one that I would just go, this is a standout guy. Like everyone, there's a few people that really stood out in different ways.
Maybe three names, if that might be easier for you.
Right, 3 names. A standout to me with extreme talent is a guy called Mitchell Smith. Have you ever heard of Mitchell Smith?
Yeah, vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, Mitchell Smith. He's an extremely talented guy. Natural ability. He was so extremely good. A second talent that stood out to me immediately was Josh Kelly. Josh Kelly, just another one that's so gifted in what he does. And then Andy Lee. Andy Lee was so smart. I would watch him training, and I think he was a veteran. Like he was a veteran even before he was a veteran. He had that ability of thought. He was so far ahead in what he was doing. He was so calm or something. So those 3 guys always, they're class acts. Like,
nice. No, I can see why you might pick those 3. So no, it's interesting. It's interesting to get an insight from, because as fans and people that haven't boxed themselves, it's difficult to we all have in our minds who's who's skilled or who we think is has got the best ability, because a lot of it's driven on results, isn't it? But sometimes you have fighters that when they're in the gym they spar, they've got that ability, but sometimes they just can't transition it into the ring. And there's a few fighters like that, aren't there? So it's quite interesting to hear about it. So then your career was, to be honest, as you said, you were on that upward trajectory pretty much until that WBSS, weren't you? Let's be honest. I mean, touching upon that IBF Bantamweight title fight against Lee Haskins, where you won your first world title, you were going into that. I think some people were thinking, you're the underdog. Obviously, you were the challenger at the time. Really, really impressive performance. I think it was a split decision, which after you said, you couldn't believe it, because I think, to be fair, you dominated that fight, and it was one of those things where it was a little bit of dodgy scoring, let's say. How was that fight for you? Did you go into it thinking?
Sorry? I'll just fix that. That fight on the night was a split decision, but one of the judges had it wrong. Yeah. So that was fixed. One of the judges actually thought that I was Lee Haskins and Lee Haskins was me.
Okay.
That's completely wrong. So it finally got put down as a
Okay. I'm thinking of when I actually watched it back in time, and I haven't looked at it again. Okay, so he should have gone to Specsavers, basically, shouldn't he? He obviously didn't know who was who. So so fantastic, even better. So convincingly beat Lee Haskins on the night. Going into that fight, were you just thinking, this is my time? Because I remember hearing the press conference, you said, he's a very experienced fighter, he's a good fighter, but there comes a time where someone needs to step aside for the younger gun or coming through, and you said, it's my time. So did you just think, this is my moment now?
Yeah, I mean, I always knew that I'm going to be a world champion. I was going to be a world champion. That's just the way it was going to be. There was no ifs or buts. I was going to be a world champion. And when that fight was announced, I had a quick look at Lee Haskins, watched one of his fights, and I knew straight away I can beat him. I got the tools to beat him. And the reason why Lee Haskins was so successful, he was world champion, etc., is because he was so awkward. Styles make fights, and I knew that he couldn't out-trick me. There was no chance. And I knew straight away, this fight's mine. I knew the fight was already won before it took place, because I knew what I could do. So, yeah. Yeah,
and then what was the feeling, if you can describe it to me, after, you get announced and they say I'm the new, and it's you who's become world champion. What kind of emotions are going through you, and what's the first thought that pops into your head as you hear that?
For me, a lot of people jump and scream, and they're just so excitement. For me, it was like a breath of fresh air. It's like a weight lifted off me for a split second. I think sort of put my head down, put my hand up, and it was just, everything just died down for me. I just calmed, and it was a lifelong dream had been achieved. I mean, it was crazy. It was something that money will never be able to buy.
Yeah, sense of relief, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's almost because it sounds to me like you put a lot of pressure on yourselves as fighters, but especially yourself, and it's almost like a release of that pressure. That, okay, you know what? I know I can do this, and now I've done it. Thank God now I've managed to get through it. Did you ever feel that, I guess, after that, such a big performance, and you're still, very young at the time as well? Is there a massive expectation? Did you feel a massive expectation around you after winning that world title?
No, I never felt expectations of myself or other people. I know a few fighters that they have those feelings, but to me, I never had any of that. I never felt like I owed anything to anyone or anything like that. I was sort of just doing me, and if I was just doing me. So I never felt, people have this expectation of me, I have to live up to their expectations. That was never the way. I was thought, I'll do me, and everything else will fall into place.
Okay, no, that makes sense. I think you're right. Some fights, I think, get overawed by the expectation, and considering how talented you were coming up from the amateurs, and then doing as well as you did so early on, and with someone at the time, in Adam Booth, and still now is seen as being such a revered trainer. But I think there could have been a lot of, you could have felt that pressure. So it's interesting to hear that you just did you, and you had your own expectations and focused on yourself, and that's probably the way to go, I guess, isn't it? Because you don't want to be weighed down by other people's expectations.
Well, if you think about it, expectations of someone it's not real. It's only an opinion, and it's a forced upon feeling. It's not real. So anything in my career that didn't benefit me, I was just so able to set it aside. It didn't mean anything. So if something wasn't benefiting me, then it was gone. So the expectations of people, gone. The opinions of people, never even, but see you later, gone. There was nothing ever that held me. I just always feel drop it away.
Nice. No, that makes sense. And then you went on to obviously win another world title. 2 fights later? The next fight. The next fight you won your world title and became unified world champion. So how was that? How was that feeling? Was that just, you know what, this is just another step in where I want to be?
I actually remember the night winning the world title, going back to the hotel room, and I turned to my wife and I said, I was sitting there at the bed and I looked at her and I was like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. I was like, I thought becoming world champion, the heavens would open and it would be the greatest thing ever. But it wasn't. And that's when my plan changed. Everything changed to me. I thought, see, long story short, being a world champion, it's a status. It doesn't mean anything. It's only a status. So I had to reevaluate myself and think, well, what do I want out of this life? What am I actually trying to achieve here? Because I thought it was to become world champion, and it absolutely wasn't. And so therefore, my goal changed to, I need to put food on the table. I need to have a roof over my head. How am I going to get there? Because holding this belt right now, it looks good, but it really doesn't do anything for you in the grand scheme of things. And I knew, well, you got to get the biggest fights. You got to get paid big. If you want big, you got to get paid big. So immediately changed. Well, who's the world champions in the weight? It's time to fight one of those.
That's really interesting, actually, because I think a lot of people, they forget, don't they, that, sometimes a boxer will say, I want the fight that gives me the biggest money, or, the most money out of a fight. And some people will criticize and say, oh, how can they say that? Surely they just want the fight that helps them progress the most, etc. But people forget that you're going in there and you are technically risking your life going in there. You're getting punched in the face. It's not a sport like tennis or football or something like that where there's no real chance of you getting harmed in any way, unless it's like a little injury. You can get hurt pretty badly, and it's a combat sport. So at the end of the day, everyone's really a prize fighter when it comes down to it. And then, as you said, you became world champion, and everyone's got different responsibilities and things that they want to do. And I think, if someone comes to me and says, I want to provide for my family, you can't say to them, oh, no, don't take X amount for this fight because you should take this fight just because, someone's opinion is on it. So I agree with you. And it kind of feeds into what you said previously, where other people's opinions don't really matter. It's about what you want in your drive. So that's quite nice to hear as well. In terms of looking back now and at that legacy, though, is legacy important to you? It must be, looking back at it. Obviously, as you said, money, having food on the table, looking back now, though, you've done that. Looking back, is it nice to just say, you know what, I have this legacy. I've won these world titles, but not just the world titles, the people that I've fought, and I can sit back and just say, you know what, I've done it all and I did it in the right way.
Not really, no.
Oh, really? Okay. So how do you look back at it?
So legacy, people talk about legacy, and I want to have a good legacy, and I want this. I want people to remember me. To me, that means, what is it? It's an opinion of someone. It means nothing. It's an opinion of someone. What matters to me is the position I put myself in now. My kids are always going to have a roof over their head. They're always going to have a couple of quid in the bank. That is what means more than any legacy. So when people used to say to me, oh, you're creating a great legacy for yourself, what am I doing? Creating an opinion of myself? Was that going to serve? It's not going to serve me in any way whatsoever. So I've never thought about legacy or trying to leave behind a good legacy. That my legacy is the fact that my kids have got a good start at life now. That to me is way more important than I've never thought about legacy whatsoever. It's nice to look at the belts on the wall and reminisce over what you've achieved. That's brilliant. But I can do that myself. I don't need any opinion or legacy or anything. I've got my belts on the wall, and every time I look at them, yes, it feels great. But that's as far as it needs to go.
That's a really interesting. That's really interesting, actually. It makes a lot of sense to what you're saying, for sure. So when you're in the ring, then, as you said, your main object is to make as much money for your family as you can. Does that then tie in, though, to testing yourself against the best? Did that tie into it? Because realistically, most of the big money fights were going to be against the top fighters anyway. So it just tied in. Then you had that drive to say, okay, you're the person in the way of me earning X amount.
Yep. That was it.
Okay.
That was it. Thing was, as well, I had a really good team around me, so my team was able to guide me correctly. As a young, ambitious, hungry man, my team was able to guide me in the correct way and make me make the right steps at the right time. So I was lucky that I was guided correctly, definitely.
And going into that WBSS, unfortunately, you had that injury against Untitled Chapter, that really serious back injury. When that happened, well, first of all, going into that WBSS, I know that you were thinking to yourself, I can win this. And obviously they had Untitled Chapter in there. They had Inoue, who ended up being the eventual champion, and a couple of other, very, very solid fighters in there. And, it was really an elite tournament. After losing, and well, I say it's a loss, but given the injury, that you had to retire from, were you just thinking to yourself, okay, I guess you could have gone one of two ways, thinking, oh man, why has this happened to me? It's just my luck. Or did you think, you know what, it's just happened. It's one of those things. I'll either recover from it, come back, or were you quite level-headed about it?
Nah, I think once the dust had settled and I was realized, well, I had to retire here. I fell into a dark pit. I fell dark. Everything around me was dark. I was drinking and I was acting up. I was just really in a bad way, because from 9 years old, didn't do much at school. I didn't do much at all. All I knew was fighting. So for someone to say, right, that's over, I thought I didn't know what to do. So I got stuck, and I got really dark and I got really low. And at the lowest point, I thought to myself, people rely on you here. I mean, you've got to provide in your life. You can't, everything you've ever worked for, you can't throw it down the drain now, because the money you got in the bank is not going to last forever. I mean, you have to do something correctly with it. So after getting low and having a wee cry to myself, dusted myself off and thought, right, I have to do something here. And that's when I started piecing the puzzle back together again.
That's really interesting, actually, that you say that. And that's understandable, given, as you said, you've been boxing since the age of 9. So it's difficult, isn't it, to just go, okay, I'm going to stop doing what I've known since, the age of 9 and go and try and do something else. Like, it's so difficult. And it's just one of those things. And obviously, Inoue now it's gone on to do things, and Untitled Chapter obviously got to the final in the end of that tournament. You did come back, though, for a fight after. I think it was 6 months or so later. I think it was at Super Bantamweight, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So you won that fight, pretty, again, convincingly, by TKO. What made you think after that, I need to retire then?
I just wasn't right. Like, I can sit here and say anything, but I knew the lead up to that fight and stuff, I wasn't right. Like, I couldn't do what I've always done. I wasn't able to move the same. I didn't feel the same. Just things weren't right. And then that's when I sort of took it a step further and started looking into stuff and realized that, well, like, if I keep going here, I'm going to end up in a bad way. So your health's your wealth at the end of the day. I was lucky enough that as a young man, I can retire. I'm young enough to step into something new and make a life for myself outside of boxing. And that's what I've done.
Yeah, no, definitely props to you. And there's a saying, isn't the cliche, that you never want boxing to retire you. You want to make sure that you get out there, before that happens. So I think 100% the right decision. Only if you're okay to, are you are you able to illuminate a little bit on the injuries that meant that you weren't able to come into it very briefly?
Which I've said this before. It's just something that I don't feel it's necessary to sit and chat about.
No, that's fine.
Got injuries. People asked me before, and it's just like, I've got an injury.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. No, that's fine. No problem at all. And going forward, then, as you said, your set is great. You're going to Dubai tomorrow, so I'm gonna be pretty jealous about that. I was just looking outside, thinking it snowed here like a couple of days ago, and you're going there. What does 2021 look like for you then? As someone who now your boxing career is behind you, you've got looks like a bright future ahead with the gym and everything. You've just got married as well. What does 2021 look like for you?
Well, I was actually talking about this to my wife there. Every year, my life seems to get better and better and better. And it's just the way things have gone. And last year, I know because of COVID, it was a horrible year for everybody, but I opened up my own gym. I opened up another gym. I got married. So I had a great 2020. And I expect 2021 to be even better. I'm starting out new adventures when it comes to property. I'm going to get myself some property, and my gym at the moment's going really well. Well, was going well until the closure. So I think I'm sort of setting everything in place to have a real decent, comfortable life. I'm definitely one of the lucky ones that when it comes to the boxing.
No, I think that's great to hear. Before we wrap up, only if you're okay to you, I've got a couple of potential matchups or fights confirmed for 2021, but I want to get your views on. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first one is your fellow countryman, Carl Frampton versus Jamal Herring. How do you think that's going to go?
So Jamal he's massive for the weight. Carl's coming up. He's a big guy for the weight. But I know Carl, he's a very smart boxer. I personally think it's going to be down to what way the first couple of rounds go. Carl's able to use his experience and be cute and box him. If the weight difference doesn't come into play, I think Carl could take it.
That's fair enough. And
given Carl's performance is up there. See if Carl brings his best to the table, I think Carl takes it.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. And in the division that obviously you made your name at Bantamweight, Inoue seems to be seen as, I guess, at the moment, the number one. It seems like he might be facing Casemiro at some point.
Yeah.
How do you see that fight going?
Casemiro's a dark horse. He really is. He's a serious banger himself. Inoue likes to trade up, so he does. Because Inoue's he's got power behind him too. They're both power punchers, and they both get away with it when they go toe to toe with someone. They get away with it because they outstrength their man. So it wouldn't surprise me if that fight happened, because Casemiro will be I think he's a bit of a bigger guy, and they both stand toe to toe because they're both used to getting their own way. I think that could be a flip of a coin. I think it'd be the first one to land.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, I think that's a lot of people have said to me, "Oh, Inoue is too good," but I think you're right. Casemiro shouldn't be underestimated for sure. Yeah. And then lastly, I guess the big one, which everyone seems to be talking about, but we don't know if it's done yet or not. AJ versus Fury, a little bit higher than the weight division you're in, but how do you think that's going to
go? So watching AJ throughout his career, he always got his own way, but when against Ruiz, he got knocked out, but he learned well from that. So in the comeback fight, he went on the back foot, he boxed him, and he boxed him really well. Joshua does the basics very, very good. He's a solid jab and a solid 1-2. And if he goes in against Fury's going to be moving about, he's going to be dancing about. He could possibly win on points, but it wouldn't surprise me if Joshua went in there and tried to box with him instead of going hell for that. It wouldn't surprise me if Joshua went in there and tried to keep it a bit long himself and box with him. And if he does that, because Joshua does the basics so well, could possibly see Joshua landing.
Mm.
Or you could say, Fury's going to go in there and do what he always does, long, and like if Deontay Wilder can't land big on him in that second fight, then what hope does Joshua have? But I mean, it all depends what attitude these fighters come into the ring with.
Yeah.
So if Joshua goes into the ring with the attitude, well, if I hit him, I'll hurt him. That's bread and butter for Tyson Fury. He's going to dance all around him. But if he goes in with the attitude of gotta play this right here, and he sticks to his boxing and real disciplined 1-2, etc., it'll be an interesting one. Like,
it's interesting, though, isn't it? Because you said that AJ lost to Ruiz, but then he seemed to pick up that little bit of fleet-footedness and back boxing on the back foot, which he hadn't really seen before. And then Fury did a similar thing with Wilder, but the other way around, that he was more aggressive. Yeah. And so Joshua is seen as a knockout artist and Fury is a master boxer, but they've kind of, I guess, merged both of those a little bit, because I think AJ boxed a little bit of a hybrid against Pulev, I'd say. So I think he's got the prospect to either be, it could be a fight, and it could be really exciting. It could be a boring fight. That's, well, when I say boring, a very technical fight that the casuals will see as boring.
So
I think that's interesting. The way it's
gonna go.
I do, quite cagey.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe they'll leave the excitement for the second fight, hopefully here in the UK, so we can all see it as well. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up?
I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much it. I'm looking forward to watching the boxing coming up. I know Matchroom got some big shows coming up. I'm actually going over to Dubai here. I'm going to see if I can get and watch the Gorky versus McGregor, Lee McGregor.
Yep, the MTK Global have got a couple of Dubai Super Series or Dubai Series, haven't they?
Yeah. Well, they're fighting for the Bantamweight European belt. Yeah. So I'm interested. I'm going to see if I can get tickets to that, and if they're allowed spectators, I'm going to go and watch that fight. So I'm interested in that one.
That's a really good fight as well, actually. Lee McGregor, I think that's been postponed a couple of times, so hopefully that gets through. That'll be a good fight. And actually, sorry, I forgot to, very last question. What was it like fighting in the SSE arena? When you're growing up, was that something that you thought, that's what I really want to do? And you managed to do it, obviously. So is it a big tick box for you?
In Belfast?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in Belfast, before it was the SSE, it was the Odyssey.
Sorry.
And it was a bit confusing. There's loads of SSE.
Sorry. Yeah, it's called SSE now. Sorry, the Odyssey. Yeah.
So it used to be called the Odyssey, and I can remember I used to stay in an apartment that overlooked the Odyssey. And I can always remember saying, I always looked at it and thought to myself, I'm going to win a world title in there. I always used to say it to myself, and rightly so, unified in there. So it was a good experience. So it was definitely one to be off the box. I can't drive past that building without thinking, telling anyone who's in the car, see in there, I was world champion.
Yeah, exactly. That must have been amazing. I think now that all the Northern Irish and Irish fighters are saying, we really want to fight there, and they haven't had one for a few years, I think. And it must have been an amazing experience. Thank you so much though for coming on. I really appreciate your time. I know that I'm sure you're busy as well with everything that's going on, and I know you need to pack as well, I'm sure, for your honeymoon tomorrow. So enjoy that.
Cheers, man.
I'm sure I'll see some nice pictures of you in the sun and on the beach and feel pretty jealous. So looking forward to that for sure. And hopefully get to see some boxing as well. TK Global shows there. So that'll be great as well. Again, thank you a lot. And we'll catch up maybe at some point later on in the year if you're up for it. And again, thank you so much. And all the best.
Mate. Good interview. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.